Before I say anything else, I need you to understand something that's going to absolutely infuriate you, and if you're a wrestling history fan, if you know anything about Montreal and WWE, you're going to want to throw your phone across the room right now. WWE just announced that Montreal is going to host Friday Night Smackdown on January 23rd and Saturday night's main event, and while that might sound like exciting news on the surface, let me tell you why this is either the boldest or most tone-deaf decision WWE has made in years. Montreal, the city where the most infamous moment in wrestling history took place. The city where Bret Hart got screwed. The city where trust was shattered and the business was exposed in ways that still reverberate today. The city that has represented betrayal, controversy, and legitimate heat in professional wrestling for nearly 30 years. And WWE is just casually rolling back into town like nothing ever happened, like the Montreal screwjob is just ancient history that nobody cares about anymore, like they can waltz into the Bell Center and expect everyone to just forget about one of the darkest chapters in their company's history. Are you serious right now? Either WWE has a massive storyline plan that's going to address this history in a meaningful way, or they're completely ignoring the elephant in the room and expecting Canadian fans to just show up and cheer like good little consumers without acknowledging the wound that never fully healed. Drop a comment right now telling me if you think WWE is brave or stupid for going back to Montreal, because this is about to get real and I guarantee you're going to have strong opinions by the end of this video. Let's start with the obvious. When anyone who knows anything about wrestling hears the words WWE and Montreal in the same sentence, there's only one thing that comes to mind. November 9, 1997. Survivor Series. Bret Hart vs. Shawn Michaels. The Montreal Screwjob. The moment Vince McMahon ordered the referee to ring the bell during a sharpshooter that Shawn wasn't submitting to, screwing Bret Hart out of the WWF Championship in his home country, on his way out of the company, in front of his family and friends. It's the most controversial finish in wrestling history, the moment that blurred the lines between reality and storyline in ways that changed the business forever, and it happened in Montreal. That city will forever be associated with that betrayal, and the fans who were there, the fans who watched, the fans who understood what happened, they've never forgotten. Bret Hart never fully forgave Vince McMahon. The relationship was damaged beyond repair for years. Montreal became synonymous with WWE screwing people over, with the company prioritizing business over loyalty, with Vince McMahon being the evil corporate villain in real life, not just on television. And now WWE is going back there like it's just another city on the tour schedule. Here's what makes me angry about this whole situation. WWE has two choices with how they handle going back to Montreal. Option 1 is to completely ignore the history, pretend the screwjob never happened or isn't relevant anymore, run their shows like they would in any other city, and hope that enough time has passed that people don't care. Option 2 is to acknowledge the history, lean into it, create storylines and moments that pay tribute to what happened while also giving fans some kind of closure or catharsis. Based on WWE's recent track record of historical storytelling, I have very little confidence they're going to choose option 2. They're probably going to go to Montreal, run the shows, maybe throw in a token reference or two if they're feeling generous, and completely miss the opportunity to do something special that could only happen in that specific city. That's not just a missed opportunity, that's disrespectful to the history and to the fans who've been carrying the weight of that moment for almost 30 years. Think about what WWE could do if they actually understood the significance of returning to Montreal. They could build an entire event around the idea of redemption and reconciliation. They could bring in Canadian wrestlers and give them spotlights on the show. They could acknowledge Bret Hart's legacy in meaningful ways beyond just a quick video package. They could create storylines where authority figures screw over babyfaces, echoing the screwjob but in a worked context that allows for satisfying payoffs. They could use the Montreal crowd, which is known for being one of the loudest and most passionate crowds in wrestling, to create an electric atmosphere that makes these shows feel special. They could make Saturday night's main event in Montreal feel like an event on par with a pay-per-view, something that people will remember and talk about for years. But are they going to do any of that? History suggests they won't, and that's what's so frustrating about this announcement. Let's talk about the Montreal wrestling fanbase specifically because they deserve recognition. Canadian wrestling fans, and Quebec fans in particular, are some of the most knowledgeable and passionate fans in the world. They understand the history of the business, they appreciate good wrestling, they react authentically to what they're seeing, and they create incredible atmospheres at live events. When WWE goes to Montreal, they know they're getting a hot crowd that's going to be engaged and vocal. But with that comes expectations. Montreal fans aren't going to just mindlessly cheer everything WWE puts in front of them. They're going to react based on what they're given, and if WWE shows up with lackluster programming that doesn't acknowledge where they are or respect the audience's intelligence and history with the company, the crowd is going to let them know. That's the risk WWE is taking by going to Montreal without a clear plan for how to handle the city's significance. The timing of these shows is interesting too. January 23rd for Smackdown, and then Saturday night's main event right after. So WWE is doing back-to-back major events in Montreal, which suggests they recognize the city's importance on some level. But announcing it this far in advance without revealing what they have planned creatively is concerning. Are there going to be special matches for these shows? Are they bringing in specific talent who have connections to Montreal or Canadian wrestling? Are they building storylines on television that will pay off in Montreal? Or did they just book the building, put the shows on the calendar, and figure they'll worry about the actual content later? The latter seems more likely based on how WWE operates, and that's exactly the kind of approach that wastes opportunities and disappoints fans who expected something more. Here's another angle that's worth discussing. Bret Hart's relationship with WWE has improved over the years. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he's made appearances, there's been some level of reconciliation even if the wounds never fully healed. So when WWE goes to Montreal now, in this era where Bret has made peace to some degree with the company, what's the right way to handle his legacy? Do they reach out and ask him to be part of these shows? Do they honor him in some way that feels genuine rather than exploitative? Or do they leave him alone and not reopen old wounds? There's no perfect answer, but whatever they decide to do or not do will be scrutinized heavily because Montreal and Bret Hart are forever linked, and you can't go to that city for major shows without his presence being felt whether he's physically there or not. The Smackdown roster and what matches they might feature in Montreal is pure speculation at this point, but it's worth thinking about what would make these shows feel special. If Roman Reigns is on SmackDown by that point, having him in Montreal where he could reference the Bloodline's connection to the Anoa'i family's history in wrestling could be interesting. If there are Canadian wrestlers on the roster, featuring them prominently in their home country makes obvious sense. If they're doing any kind of tournament or championship matches, having those take place in Montreal with that hot crowd would elevate them. But again, all of this requires WWE to think ahead and plan creatively, which isn't something we can take for granted based on recent evidence of them just throwing shows together without much thought for location-specific storytelling. Saturday night's main event being in Montreal is particularly significant because that brand is supposed to represent WWE's premium television events. It's meant to feel special, like a mini pay-per-view, with big matches and important storylines progressing. Having it in Montreal of all places raises the stakes and the expectations. This isn't just any Saturday night's main event, this is Saturday night's main event in the most historically significant controversial city in WWE history. If WWE treats it like just another episode of their programming, if they don't rise to the occasion and deliver something worthy of the location, the backlash is going to be severe. Montreal fans and wrestling fans globally are going to expect WWE to acknowledge where they are and what it means, and anything less than that is going to feel like a slap in the face. Let me address something that some people might be thinking. Maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this. Maybe the Montreal screwjob was almost 30 years ago and it's time to move on. Maybe modern fans don't care about what happened in 1997. And to those people I say you're completely missing the point. The Montreal screwjob isn't just a moment in wrestling history, it's the moment that changed how fans view the business. It's when kayfabe died for a lot of people. It's when Vince McMahon the character was born, leading directly to the Mr. McMahon persona that defined the Attitude Era. It's the catalyst for so many things that came after, from the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin's anti-authority character getting over even more, to WCW using the controversy to their advantage, to wrestlers having less trust in promoters going forward. The ripples from that night are still felt today in how the business operates and how fans consume wrestling. So no, it's not just ancient history that doesn't matter. It matters deeply, especially when WWE returns to the scene of the crime. The business implications of WWE running these shows in Montreal are worth examining too. Ticket sales, merchandise, local media coverage, all of these things factor into why WWE chooses certain cities for certain events. Montreal is a major market, the Bell Center is a great venue, and there's clearly demand for WWE events there or they wouldn't be going. But there's a difference between running shows in a city because it makes business sense and running shows in a city while understanding and respecting that city's unique relationship with your company. WWE can do both, they should do both. But whether they will remains to be seen. If they approach Montreal purely as a business transaction, just another stop on the tour, they're missing an opportunity to create something meaningful that resonates beyond just that weekend. The potential for CM Punk moments is something I haven't mentioned yet but needs to be addressed. CM Punk, who famously wore a Bret Hart shirt during his pipe bomb promo, who has been critical of WWE in the past, who understands wrestling history and knows how to work smart crowds, could have incredibly interesting moments if he's part of these Montreal shows. Whether he's back with WWE by January or not is unclear, but if he is, putting him in Montreal where the fans would absolutely understand and appreciate everything he represents could create magic. This is the kind of creative thinking WWE should be doing, looking at their roster and the specific location and figuring out how to create moments that could only happen in that place with those people. Let's also consider what other wrestling companies have done when running shows in significant locations. AEW has been pretty good about acknowledging when they're in cities with wrestling history, bringing in local legends, referencing important moments, making the location feel like it matters. New Japan Pro Wrestling has traditions around certain venues. Independent companies often build entire shows around being in historically significant places. WWE has the resources and the platform to do this better than anyone, but they often don't because they're so focused on their own internal storylines that they forget about external context in history. Montreal is the ultimate test of whether WWE has learned to balance their storytelling with acknowledgement of the broader wrestling world and its history. The commentary for these shows is going to be fascinating to pay attention to. Are Michael Cole and the announce team going to reference the screwjob? Are they going to talk about Montreal's significance in wrestling history? Or are they going to ignore it completely and just call the action like they would anywhere else? Commentary sets the tone for how viewers at home understand what they're watching, and if the announcers don't acknowledge the elephant in the room, it sends a message that WWE either doesn't care about the history or doesn't think it's important enough to mention. Neither of those is a good look when you're running major events in Montreal of all places. Here's what I think is the worst-case scenario for these shows. WWE goes to Montreal, runs perfectly acceptable wrestling shows that would be fine in any other city, doesn't acknowledge the history in any meaningful way, doesn't do anything special or location specific, and treats it like just another weekend on the touring schedule. The shows happen, they're fine, and then WWE moves on to the next city, having completely wasted the opportunity to do something memorable in one of the most significant locations in wrestling history. That would be typical WWE, taking something that should be special and treating it as routine, and it would be incredibly disappointing to anyone who understands what Montreal represents. The best case scenario is that WWE has a plan. They've thought about what it means to return to Montreal. They've built storylines that will pay off in satisfying ways in front of that crowd. They acknowledge the history without dwelling on it to the point of being exploitative. They give fans moments that feel special and unique to that location. They make Smackdown and Saturday night's main event in Montreal feel like events you had to watch, that you couldn't miss, that you'll remember and talk about for years. WWE is capable of this when they put in the effort. The question is whether they will, and based on recent patterns, I'm skeptical but hopeful. So here's what I need you to do. If you're planning to attend these shows in Montreal, make your voice heard. Let WWE know what you expect. Cheer what's good, boo what's bad, react authentically to what you're seeing. If you're watching from home, pay attention to how WWE handles being in Montreal. Do they rise to the occasion or do they waste the opportunity? Comment below with your predictions for what's going to happen, share this video with other wrestling fans who care about history and storytelling, and let's hold WWE accountable for doing right by Montreal and by the fans who've been carrying the weight of the screwjob for nearly 30 years. Hit that like button if you want WWE to acknowledge the history, subscribe for more wrestling analysis that actually considers context and meaning, and let's see if WWE can pull this off or if they're about to disappoint an entire city and fanbase once again.